When I was asked to design a course on authentic assessment, my first response was, hell yeah, as I'm a self identified nerd when it comes to all things assessment, ever since I got my hands on Stiggins in the mid 2000s. As I began brainstorming outcomes and poring over resources, I did what any educator who has lived through the trauma of a negative evaluation due to not following rules would do. I began to question myself. I began to worry that I would be stirring up trouble. I wondered if the rhetorical messages shared and celebrated by this curation of resources and thought sharing would clash with policies and mandates, thereby creating chaos and dissonance. I said all of this to my district administrative mentor, who, in her empathetic and always enlightened style, reminded me about ripples. Ripples are small acts that lead to bigger progressive change. When I sit at the edge of the Fox River with my children, their favorite thing to do is watch boats go by. They get so excited by the fact that one small boat cutting through the water can create a series of waves that they can jump over and play in as though they were at the ocean. In what ways is this like our role as educators when we think about making learning better for our students? The smallest change we make in our practice can send ripples bigger than we can imagine from where we sit. We have influence in this way. This course is all about making those ripples. For those of you whom I've worked closely with, you know that I am also a fan of history. Not because I'm good at memorizing dates. I'm actually pretty terrible at memorizing dates unless it applies to when a song came out on the radio. But because understanding history provides such a great context to our current reality. And so I like thinking about how our current state-run traditional education system was designed in the early 20th century to achieve a number of progressive outcomes. One, it was designed to provide a place for children to go during the day, which would reduce crime in cities and allow both parents to work and eliminate the problem of child mortality as a result of unsafe conditions in the workplace for children. It was also designed to provide just enough knowledge and skill for an industrial workforce. And so, children were arranged in age-based cohorts and provided a standardized curriculum that they either achieved or did not achieve. Achievers would advance to more specialized and nuanced education. Students that fell behind would still be able to do industrial work. You have likely been exposed to the idea that there have been some rapid changes over the last 50 years in terms of disruptive technology. Life for graduates in 2020 is not what it was in 1920. Historians of economic trends characterize 20th century work as having a top-down design in which work your way to the top with good behavior or exceptional talent. There is a limited pool of markets, which means there's competition for jobs and consumers. Your job is articulated by boundaries, whether that be actual space or a specific task or role. You are either at work or you are at home, and therefore are in a constant state of balancing one versus the other. An individual begins a career and retires generally in that same career. The company or organization is what you show your loyalty to, and its success relies on corporate contribution. Finally, the way to ensure success is to place boundaries and controls on employees or provide external rewards and incentives. So what has changed? Work is now organized around networks and relationships instead of a pyramid or hierarchy. There's no longer a finite pool of markets, and people are constantly developing new ones that didn't exist only a few months prior. A job is no longer confined by role or function and involves projects and integrated skills. Figuring out how to make something happen is the most common form of work now. Since work is not as often confined to a brick and mortar location, nor is it always confined to a 9-to-5 schedule, life and work become a bit blurred, and people choose when and where they will manage their time and tasks. Careers are constantly changing, and jobs that never existed before are generating daily. So career changes are inevitable. No longer is loyalty to an organization or company a thing. Developing relationships is now key. And finally, there's no longer a need for compliance and control, as developing relationships and building trust have become the most important values. So I'm going to guess what you might be thinking. You're wondering why our jobs as educators do not necessarily reflect 21st century work. Well, this is an insightful observation. In what ways is our current educational infrastructure designed to support a 20th century workforce? Horn and Staker define disruptive innovation as a phenomenon that causes the way we do things to take off in a completely different direction, a paradigm shift, if you will, that trickles down into the day-to-day activities of our culture. The development of the internet has been one of the most disruptive innovations in our lifetime. To digest this, let's talk about video streaming. Not too far from my memory, when my family and I used to sit down to watch a show, we watched whatever was on, based on a finite schedule. I would actually look at the TV guide in the newspaper to decide what to watch. If we missed a show, we simply missed it and hoped to catch the syndicated reruns over the summer. Well, unless you knew how to program your VCR, which my college roommates and I did when one of us was held up in the library and Beverly Hills 90210 was on. Well, now watching shows is completely on demand. We watch what we want, when we want, and however long we want. The choices are nearly endless, and we refer to our guilty pleasure as binge-worthy. Television watching will never be the same. Since March of 2020, we have been asked to rethink the way we do things in order to ensure that we reduce the spread of a global pandemic and maintain safety. Because of the internet and web-based tools, we are able to continue engaging in work and school while social distancing. However, because our educational infrastructure is still set up to support a 20th century workforce, we are experiencing some problems. We could list many of them, but to honor our time, let's just focus on those associated with assessment. How do we give a test to students and ensure that they don't cheat? We've been offered technology tools that prevent students from navigating away from their screen, but we also know that if students are working from home, they can open up another device. We've also heard teachers wanting students to turn on their cameras so they can monitor cheating. This presents problems as well. What do we do about students who are not keeping up to pace in the curriculum with their peers? We can't move them forward in their grade cohorts or let them take the requisite course without demonstrating the learning targets on time. What do we do about students that are not engaging in the curriculum when they shut off their cameras or refuse to turn anything in? I offer you this mixed metaphor as you envision these questions as only addressing the top of the iceberg. Instead, let's dig at the roots. What if we could design our assessments to be opportunities for students to showcase their learning in a manner that replicates 21st century work? What if our assessment practices could empower students to manage their own learning rather than just show compliance? So many questions. You might find that this course creates more questions than answers. Some of you will find that this class is right up your alley and affirms the divergent thinking you've just been waiting to unleash. Some of you may feel uncomfortable as it challenges your thinking and the way we do school. Just remember that a small ripple can impact bigger systemic change. It begins with you. I truly hope that you have fun with this experience and really dig into the resources. Take time to think about your own practice and share your thinking with us. My hope is that we will continue the conversations about authentic assessment and engage together as a professional learning network beyond the scope of this course.